Good morning, freeze dryers. I have a terrific recipe for you this weekend because we are doing something that can just be made over and over and over again, and I am talking about homemade Greek yogurt, because all you need is a gallon of milk and just a little dab of Greek yogurt. Once we make this recipe once, you can just keep using that yogurt. You save a little back. You can use it for the next time. And today we're not only going to make freeze-dried Greek yogurt, but we're going to see if we can freeze-dry the yogurt and then bring back, rehydrate it, and use the culture for our next batch. So stay tuned for some freeze-dried Greek yogurt coming up. Today's recipe is super simple because all you need is a gallon of milk. I'm using whole milk. I'm not sure if you can use 2% or something like that, but I like using whole milk because the texture of the Greek yogurt, it turns out awesome. And the only other thing that you need is 2 tablespoons of a high quality plain Greek yogurt or plain yogurt. And the cool thing about yogurt is that you basically just need to save back a small portion of your last batch as a culture or a starter to just keep making more. And you can really just save back that 2 tablespoons every time and just keep it refrigerated or whatever. I'm hoping today that we can figure out if you freeze dry it and then rehydrate it, that we can actually bring that back and use that for our next batch. That would be awesome if it just had, almost an unlimited shelf life. And we're gonna find that out a little bit later in the video. But for now, all we need to do, I'm using an Instant Pot. I believe you can use a crock pot, and I have seen it done in the oven as well. Today's recipe, we're just gonna do an Instant Pot. And the first thing you need to do is just dump this entire gallon into your Instant Pot. And then all you need to do is find the yogurt setting on your Instant Pot. And usually if you press it a few times, you can go to this boil setting. That's where we want it to go, because we're gonna try and take the temperature up to 180 degrees. And while you're doing that, you're gonna need some sort of thermometer so you can keep an eye on this. You wanna whisk this throughout the whole process because you do not want that bottom part of the pot to burn, because it will ruin the whole thing. So I have also used a digital thermometer, which is really handy because a lot of those you can set the temperature to alarm you once you hit your desired temperature. So once this goes up to 180, we want to immediately cool this back down, which means we want to put this into an ice bath. We'll pull this whole container out and we'll set it into an ice bath. You can do this many different ways. I like to just fill up the sink with some water and some ice, just so it's nice and cold, because to me, the faster you can cool it down, the faster you can move on to the next step, and I also think it's more effective for the yogurt. And while we're waiting for this, I want to mention that the quality of ingredients used for this recipe is definitely going to have an effect on the quality of yogurt that you get. And to me, spending an extra $1 or $2 to get some really high quality yogurt and some high quality milk, it makes all the difference in the world, as you'll see when this is all done. All right, so now that we're up to 180, we're gonna go into our ice bath. This pot will be extremely hot, so keep that in mind. But really, we wanna circulate the water around this pot, and we're gonna stir that as well, so we can distribute that temperature evenly. And while we're cooling it down, we're looking for somewhere in between 95 and 110 degrees. So I usually shoot for about 100. And then we're actually gonna take some of this out. We're gonna mix it with our culture or our starter, 2 tablespoons of that. All right, we're getting real close to being done. You just take a little bit of this milk out of here, and then we're gonna take our whisk. We're gonna whisk all this together and make kind of a paste. We're gonna add it back in with the rest of our milk. And then we're gonna go into the Instant Pot for about 9 hours. It can be anywhere from 8 hours to 10 hours. And actually what that's gonna change is the tartness of your yogurt. I have found that my preference, I like about 9.5 hours. I believe the longer it's in, the more tart it is, if I'm right. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. Okay, so we'll go back into here and we'll mix that all together. And then we're gonna go back into the Instant Pot. So we'll go with lid on. We're gonna go to our yogurt, and then we want 9.5 hours. And yes, you heard me right, 9.5 hours, but the payoff is well worth it, so be patient. Okay, we should be all good to go now. And that looks like it thickened up really nice. So the next thing we need to do is strain most of the moisture and separate the whey off of this yogurt. And the way you want to do that is you can take either a cheesecloth or a towel like this. And we're going to pour the yogurt into that. I'm actually going to take mine and separate it from this bowl. And then I'm going to put it back over the top of the Instant Pot container, and then I'm going to go into the fridge with this. And what's going to happen is all of the thin liquid whey will actually drain to the bottom of this pot, and the thick part of the yogurt will stay at the top, and you'll be left with something that looks like a block of cheese almost, or a block of cream cheese. All right, let's see how this turned out. This has been sitting overnight. And most of the time you can just kind of flip this out of here. This one's not quite as thick as I've done in the past, but really it just kind of depends on your preference, how you like the yogurt. This is still a really good texture, and I think it's probably not really gonna make a difference once you get this into the freeze dryer, get everything freeze dried. Our gallon of milk is going to make probably about 1 tray, maybe a little bit more than 1 tray, or maybe like a large tray. And you'll notice if you make this multiple times, it's never gonna be completely consistent. One thing that is consistent is that you will get this nice byproduct. This is actually the whey, and it's the same thing as when you hear like protein shakes have protein whey and things like that in there. Definitely save that. You can use this for all kinds of different stuff. And this stuff is just jam-packed with good protein and all kinds of good stuff. I like to use this in my morning smoothies. You can bake pizza with it, you can make bread with it, you can add it to all kinds of things. You could also probably freeze dry this if you wanted to and turn this into a protein powder. What I ended up with was an entire medium tray, which is 6 cups. I'm filled to the brim, up to the lip, and then probably another, I don't know, 3 cups, maybe 4 cups. So I would probably count on this recipe doing about 8 to 10 cups pretty consistently. And I went on to some pre-cut parchment paper, and then I'm gonna drop the dividers in the 40 portion. That'll give us some nice ice cube yogurt. If you wanna use it for recipes and stuff as a substitute, which we often do, this makes an awesome substitute for all kinds of different stuff. But I'm gonna put a lid on this, and then we're gonna put it in the freezer. I think it's very important to freeze this before you freeze dry. And I wanna get a shot of how similar this is to sour cream. This makes an awesome sour cream replacement. When it's a little bit thicker, it makes a good cream cheese replacement as well. And part of the reason why we leave ours in longer, like I was talking about, it will give it more tartness, and it actually tastes almost identical to sour cream. All right, we have some yogurt ice cubes, and before I go into the freeze dryer, I'm gonna get a pre-freeze dried weight on this so we can make a rehydration formula for it. And this tray weighs 2476 grams. And make sure that you subscribe to Live Life Simple if you've not done that already. We're primarily a freeze drying channel. And also take a minute to check out the new freeze drying cookbook. This recipe will be in there, as well as close to 200 other recipes at this point. And we're adding recipes and information to that very, very quickly. So a great resource if you're a freeze dryer. Another great resource is our Facebook group and our MeWe group. There are tens of thousands of members on each one of those now, and just a wealth of information. If you have not checked it out, please do so. You won't regret it. And you can find that by searching Retired at 40's freeze drying group in each one of those. Or if you're curious about freeze drying and you're possibly ready to pull the trigger on a freeze dryer, please consider using our affiliate link. That can be found down in the description below. You can click the show more button or more, just depending on what platform you're on. That will send you to the manufacturer's homepage. It'll give you all the specs and information you want on these freeze dryers. That kicks us back a small commission. We use that commission to put back into our YouTube content. We also put it back in our social media groups. We do giveaways and things like that almost weekly. We also use that commission for producing new products for streamlining freeze drying that can be found at freezedryingsupplies.com. And if it's been a little bit since you've been to the store, make sure you check it out again. We have some new products that came out. We also have a product that's coming out very soon that we are very excited for. And now let's get back to our homemade Greek yogurt and potential Greek yogurt starter. And this yogurt took about 33 hours. We used 25.92 kilowatt hours, and it looks really nice. The tray is good and warm. That's a good sign. I have a new toy that I want to try. I tried it in the last video. I want to try it again today. In the last video, I mentioned this camera. I didn't mention the brand. It's Fleur or Fleer. I'm not sure which one it is, but I really want to give this a try with several runs before I want to promote it to you guys. I want you to be aware of it though. It's really cool. It just plugs into your phone, and it's less expensive than if you bought a separate thermal camera. And what a thermal camera does is it gives you kind of a heat signature on the trays, which is helpful because it can show you if there's any cold spots. And you can also set it so it'll show the hottest point and the coldest point within the frame of your camera. So right now the center part is around 110 degrees. And then if you look over here, I put an ice cube right here. This is showing up as 41 degrees. If you had a spot that was cold in here or frozen or needed some attention, obviously it would be in that 40 or 30 degree or lower range. So if it shows up as a cold spot or ice, then you know that you need to add more freeze drying time. And if this ends up being the new useful tool for freeze drying, I'll do a review on it for you guys. I'll give you the price, I'll give you all the specs and all that kind of stuff and show you how to use it properly. And we'll do that in the future. But right now I want to get a weight on our freeze dried yogurt after the freeze drying cycle, so we know how much water to rehydrate these with. So these are now 1,120 grams. So I'm gonna bag these up in the Avid Armor now, and make sure you get your 10% off since the holiday is coming up. If you're purchasing one of these, it'll get you 10% off if you use our affiliate. Also, I mentioned in the last video too, this is the best time of the year to buy a freeze dryer or a second freeze dryer if you're wanting to purchase one, because this is the time of year when Harvest Right does their biggest discount. All month they'll do the Black Friday sale, and it's $500 off of a freeze dryer. So, and if you're gonna purchase one, please consider using our affiliate link. It really helps out with our YouTube channel, and it helps out with all the other things that we do. I want to actually just kind of put these in a food processor similar to what we did with the potatoes last week, because that's gonna help us get a rehydration formula. So these don't really stay in cubes. They're very, very fluffy. And the dividers, even though sometimes things don't stay in the cubes, what it helps you do is it gives you a nice solid division, so you can kind of portion things out that way. So really, even if it doesn't stay in a cube form and you don't want it to stay in a cube form, like this will not stay in a cube form, and we want it to be powdered just for rehydration purposes, but it does give you an idea of how much you can take out in comparison to the whole tray. So it's gonna help you when you're bagging, it's gonna help you with your food storage, and it's ultimately gonna help you with your rehydration. And those 4 cubes turned into 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of powder. The craziest thing about when you powder foods, especially, and just freeze-dried foods, but especially powdered freeze-dried foods, is how little space they take up. What's crazy is all of that yogurt, an entire tray, so six cups worth of yogurt, fit down, and it really only makes, it goes down to about, I don't know, maybe 2 cups of powder, and this thing only weighs 5-6 ounces. I just love that because there's so much nutrition packed into this little tiny bag, and it weighs nothing, and it takes up not any room at all. And you can store it. There's no other way that you can store dairy products, especially, for years and years and years with no refrigeration. And even if you had refrigeration, you wouldn't be able to do it. So I love that. This is the kind of stuff that keeps my blood flowing with freeze drying. I'm doing most of this in a ball jar so I can just grab it off the shelf, because we use this stuff a lot for a whole lot of different stuff. I think it'll really be handy for some freeze drying recipes. We'll kind of incorporate some of that later into our freeze drying recipes. All right, well, that made a really handy thing to throw in your freeze-dried pantry. I think if my calculations are correct, if we take 1/4 cup of this yogurt powder and we add 1/2 cup of water to it, and we mix it very thoroughly, we should be able to get about 1 serving of Greek yogurt. And I've noticed a couple things about dairy. One is that dairy, when you rehydrate it from freeze-dried, no matter if it's yogurt, if it's milk, if it's cottage cheese, whatever it is, it does seem like it changes colors a little bit. It almost gets more of a creamy looking color to it. And something that I think needs to be mentioned is that dairy to me is the most important to make sure that you are completely freeze dried, because dairy has the best chance of getting bad, I think, going rancid, having food storage issues. So I did actually go to a 1-to-1 ratio with this because it was not working according to the weight measurements, which is kind of strange. Part of that could be because of the heat when we made homemade yogurt, but the 1-to-1 seems to be getting us closer. You definitely need to whisk this because when this is freeze dried, it gets very chalky, and it's hard to get it back to that smooth texture that you want that homemade Greek yogurt has. All right, I think we're there. I think at least to the consistency when we freeze dried. There's definitely different textures for yogurt depending on which you want, but this is about how it was when we put it in, and my ratio ended up being 1.5 to 1, 1.5 being the powder to 1 water. All right, so other than the ratio, pretty much a no-brainer for yogurt, but really what I wanna do, I'm gonna throw this in the fridge because I want to use this as the culture or a starter for our next batch. So I'm gonna do that whole cycle right now, and I'll show you those results here in a second. I do wanna mention first though, I forgot to mention when we were making our first batch of yogurt, it's very helpful to clean your Instant Pot and any of the utensils that you're using before you actually make your yogurt. It kind of sterilizes everything. An easy way to do that, just put the little rack thing in the bottom of your Instant Pot and then throw some water in the bottom of it. Throw all of your utensils inside of it and then just go to high pressure. You can just usually do that for a couple minutes. That gets it hot enough that it'll sterilize everything. So did the yogurt culture survive a freeze drying cycle? We are about to find out. And the answer is yes, it did. That's super cool. Let's get this strained and we'll give it a taste test. Now this has been sitting overnight and we have the same exact results. And this batch actually turned out a little better. The way I like it is when it just kind of rolls off the towel like that. And that is awesome. That's such good news. I'm so excited this is going to work. That basically makes it so you can have infinite yogurt and you can rehydrate many, many years in the future. In the meantime, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple. Catch you next week.